Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Kim, and I am the Associate Chair in the School of Architecture. I am also the Director of the undergraduate program, and we're so happy that you're here with us today. I'm particularly excited about this conversation for this session because we're going to talk specifically about international education. And I've invited a couple of faculty and students who have participated on these programs in the past. Sabra Khan is the director of the international education programs for the School of Architecture, also an associate professor, holds a joint appointment in architecture and industrial design. Danielle Wilkins is an assistant professor in the School of Architecture and teaches in design studios, the required history of architecture 1 course, and we'll be hopefully traveling to Greece and Italy next summer as one of the faculty in the Art and Architecture in Greece and Italy program. And then 3 students, Avni, Tori, and Kyla, are students who have participated in a range of different kinds of opportunities, including an exchange program, and then our UGIS program in Barcelona. So I know we have students who are joining us who are both just starting their search, looking at different colleges and trying to understand what differentiates different programs from each other. And I believe we might also have some incoming first-year students that are joining us too. So welcome. Really happy that you're here and able to join us. So the way that this session is going to be organized is we're going to start first with kind of an open discussion between the 6 of us, and with a series of kinds of topics and questions that'll take us through the first part of the session. I then have a general program overview that talks a little bit about the BS Art program, a little bit about the admissions process, and certainly, as Carmen mentioned, we do welcome your questions as we are speaking. So please do use the Q&A box, even as in the middle of our conversation, because we will be checking that out and we can answer those as we move through the session. So I want to go ahead and start. And I think, one of the things that you all may be aware of is, many schools of architecture have international programs. And so, but I do think that the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the assortment of programs that we offer and opportunities are unique. And I'm sure you're curious to hear a little bit more about that. So we'll start the conversation talking about an overview. Sabra?
Okay, I'm sorry. I was looking for a visual cue. Good morning, folks, and thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you can all hear me. Those circulating this fall, I look forward to seeing you soon. And those of you who have us on the long-range plan, whether for next year or even further, fantastic. So what is absolutely unique about our international programs? A couple of things. First, they're at Georgia Tech, and that sounds kind of counterintuitive that you would have a tremendous infrastructure to support international education, but it actually does, and it's something that Georgia Tech ranks very highly in US News and World Report rankings on this. What are the things that the institution provides? First of all, everyone, in-state or out-of-state, pays in-state tuition. That's pretty major. Second, there's the OIE office, the Office of International Education, that provides sort of a 360 support structure as you think about where you might want to go while you're on the ground and so on. And this is pretty important because in my experience, many schools in the US, schools, have international programs, but they're invariably subcontracted. They're subcontracted to folks who are on the ground elsewhere, who get students from different schools together, and they are run by by sort of academic travel agents, not to denigrate, but they really are not run by faculty who know the students. And the third thing that Georgia Tech has is this thing called International Plan that when you come here, I will speak to you more about. What makes our School of Architecture programs unique? That's the question that Julie asked me to speak to very briefly about. Well, again, a couple of things. There are three ways in which you can, as a BS architecture student, you can go overseas and you can continue with studio, or you can go overseas and not have studio. So there are two kinds of programs. That if you go overseas and have studio, you can go on one of our two programs that are SOA faculty led to Barcelona and to Ghana. And you can also go on the GT Exchange, which is also to an architecture school that's on our list. That's on GT's list, and you can continue to take studio. So basically, when you go overseas on a study abroad with studio, you are keeping track of your BS architecture degree program, because any program that you go on, whether it's ours or somewhere else, you're gaining credit that keeps you on track. The one program we have right now that the SOA program that goes as art and architecture in Italy and Greece doesn't have studio, but it has Georgia Tech credits. So basically, the opportunity here to just recap is that you can have the quality Georgia Tech education, but somewhere else. So for me, that's a win-win. You're getting your Georgia Tech credits, and you're not in Atlanta all the time. So those are the three things that actually make it absolutely unique. We have three students here, each of whom has experienced a different version of it. Avani went on a GT exchange to Singapore. The advantage of Singapore, of course, is this in English. Tori Ellis went to Yonsei in Korea, Seoul, Korea. And that's there. The GT Exchange does not teach in English, but has courses in Korean as well. So it's a slightly different experience. And then Kyla was just this spring in the UGS program in Barcelona, faculty led in Barcelona. So three quite different experiences for you to hear from them about.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Saber on the fact that our study abroad programs are special in the case that you get to go with your professors and with other students, especially if you're one that may have cold feet about going abroad alone for the first time. Then being with professors from Georgia Tech is very comforting, especially when they know the area so well, as Mark and Saber did. It was very immersive to learn in an untraditional setting and use what Saber would say, the city as your lab. That phrase has stuck with me since our program because it was very nice to explore, but you're also learning and you get to understand the local architecture and use that into your studio projects. So I definitely think that at least for the undergraduate international studio, it's special in that way.
Yeah, and see, I took the exact opposite approach and I jumped in full cold feet into a program that no one from our school had done before because I really wanted to go to Korea. And you know what? You can do that. It took a lot of coordinating, but as long as you can talk to Saber and you can talk with OIE, they're all there to help you and you can do whatever you want. So like I said, I was the first one to go to Yonsei for architecture. There had been other GT students who had gone to Yonsei, so that contact point was already there. And you are able to find classes that are taught in English. So my studio, while it's traditionally taught in Korean because it's mostly Korean students, a lot of the professors there are trained or they take their college education abroad, so they speak English, and they were very accommodating to me.
And you were taking courses in Korean as well as others. So you were fully a Korean culture and language fix as well.
Yeah, I took some courses that had some Korean mixture in it. It was very interesting.
And I studied at Singapore, also through the GT exchange program. And what was really fun about that was because I got to work very closely with local students. It was kind of a different framework, especially in my studio classes. It was like a completely different vantage point, and a lot of different values that I was exposed to. So that was really nice for me.
That's great. It's really great to hear you share all of your experiences with the various programs. And I think, one of the programs that Sabra mentioned at the beginning, which is the Art and Architecture in Greece and Italy program, curious maybe to hear some thoughts about that one.
Sure. So in an ideal world, we would actually be finishing up the term tomorrow. So I would be speaking to you from Venice, which sounds pretty nice. But and admittedly, I might not be speaking to you. I would hopefully be out in the city. But I think that's one of the best things about a study abroad is you actually get that full immersion. It is way more meaningful and impactful to learn about the Acropolis by walking through it. And listening to it and seeing it and sort of touching and experiencing the architecture than simply, being in a room and looking at images. So that's the one real benefit, and doing it alongside people who are just as engaged and as passionate in the topic. So the Greece and Italy program consists of 6 weeks. The first 2 spent in Greece, the last 4 in Italy, and you're moving between different sites. And there are a series of faculty members who cycle through the program. So we kind of tag team to take over in the different cities. So it's one where you're kind of moving throughout, but that allows the faculty to really access, I think, their particular skill set and interests, and then also get access to a few things that you wouldn't have otherwise. And I would say that's one of the benefits of going on a study abroad is that you have this embedded network. So you're able to get to sites that otherwise would be really difficult to either navigate to, or maybe they're not open to the public. But as students of architecture and design, and at least within the art and architecture program for Greece and Italy, you meet other students within Georgia Tech. You actually have access to things that might not otherwise be available to you. So within that program, as mentioned, it doesn't have a studio component. We have kind of field work that we do. And we're looking at sort of the digital humanities side of things. So there's a lot of photography and mapping and understanding how systems work, playing with even some kind of contemporary technology, which is pretty fun. And you have the opportunity to work with students who are in architecture, industrial design, but also from other colleges within Georgia Tech. So that is a program where it's quite mixed, and one where students get 12 credits over the course of the summer. So within 6 weeks, we're able to get a lot done. And you have a preparatory 1 credit course for that the spring before. So it allows you to get a little bit more familiar with the places, the pacing of the course, general things like basic language, and just understanding, what we'll be up to for those 6 weeks.
I think one of the things, Daniel, what you mentioned, just reiterating with the Greece and Italy program is that it is not studio based, and so the programs that Kyla, Tori, and Omni all participated on, those include a studio component and are generally open for students after they finish their sophomore year. So, and maybe Sabra, you can jump in about this one, but what about first year students and what are opportunities? Is there an opportunity for them to participate in a program like the Greece and Italy program the summer after their first year?
So yes, they obviously, we have, as School of Architecture has a rule that you have to finish your foundation studios, which means the first 4. So the faculty-led programs to Barcelona and to Ghana, as well as GT Exchange, for SOA students, you go in your junior and senior year. The Greece and Italy program, you can go as a rising sophomore in the summer between your freshman and sophomore year. And there are a number of programs like that once you're here, you can think about. One of the things that Georgia Tech, again, does very well is there are programs called LBAT, Language for Business and Technology, that can take you with Georgia Tech students to Shanghai, to Korea, to places where you can get a lot of your humanities, social science, and other kinds of courses in of different majors who all share a particular kind of interest, whether it's learning Korean or whether it's who was thinking about this most recently, or whether they want to do sustainability, sustainable agriculture or something. So that's a whole other way of studying abroad when you are at Georgia Tech and a BS Arch major. It is, I should say this, a number of you will be coming with a hell of a lot of AP. And that's really my main task, to get you, once you feel that you've arrived at Tech, the pinnacle of your ambitions, and then you're just going to stay put. That's not my job. My job is to get you out again. And even though you might think, and that's the one-on-one conversations with Tori and others, you might realize that in the summer, you can go to a number of programs that might help you meet a minor in another discipline, a focus on something else, language, and all of those come with international education. So just to summarize again, you can stay on track with your BS Arch credits when you take Studio. And that would be through the two programs, Barcelona, Ghana, or GT Exchange. You can then also go overseas and collect experiences, but also credits that might go towards a minor. And that's super important, Leticia. In fact, when Tori and I had our first conversation, I said, Tori, why Korea? And she said K-pop. And so, that in itself was enough, because that suggested that she already had something going. And of course, as we just heard, the K-pop stans have now in the States from the news last week. So I think if you have a germ of an idea or interest in any part of the world and in a different kind of study area that complements architecture, the study abroad is a way of accessing that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that story about Tori and what motivated her to look at Korea. So I think, one of the things that, and that's kind of a great segue into the next thing I'd love to hear from the students is, certainly for those of you that are watching this webinar, you might be thinking, well, gosh, like Singapore and Korea or, Barcelona, I've never been, to various parts of even in the United States, so, and I guess for the students thinking back to what you were thinking about before you decided to travel abroad, what is something you might tell your younger self, as you're trying to, kind of grapple with, should I do it? Should I not? Why do I want to do it? Curious to hear you guys talk about that.
So I think before studying abroad, because of how intimidating it sounded to me, I kind of felt like the need to plan every single detail of what I was going to do. Once I got to Singapore, like every place I wanted to go, everything I wanted to experience. But then I think looking back at my time there, some of the best experiences I had were the ones that weren't planned. So it could have been through like meeting another exchange student there who recommended I visit a building, or trying a new cafe that I saw on my way to lunch. So like, I think I would tell myself probably not to over plan and over worry about figuring every single thing out, because I think the best part of exchange programs are like the little surprises once you get there.
For me, I definitely would tell my younger self not to hesitate at all and to definitely do it, no question. It's definitely one of the best experiences I've ever had and worth it. Before I even like went to Georgia Tech, I didn't think that I would ever study abroad. It's just not something that I registered as something I could do. So I got very lucky to be at Georgia Tech where we have such amazing programs because then I could just pick when I got there. But definitely I would tell my younger self to do it. And then when you do it, immerse yourself in the culture as much as possible, get to know the people, get to know the place, explore, just make yourself feel like a local, I think, and you get the best of the experience.
Yeah, I would agree. I definitely, when I was going into college, it was my goal to study abroad because I went to a high school where they had study abroad options over spring break and whatever, and I was never allowed to do it. But I knew going into college, I made it my goal. And, but as it came closer, I was like, okay, I have to plan it, and I have to plan it, I have to plan it, I have to plan it. And I like ended up packing 4 suitcases worth of stuff. And it was, I'm such an overpacker. Don't do that. Younger self, this is what I would tell my younger self is don't overpack, don't overplan, just go with the flow. You meet amazing people. You see amazing things you would never see before. Um, yeah, highly recommend.
So that's a great segue because and Kyla, you actually touched on this a little bit about just immerse yourself in a different culture. And so, how did you guys manage that though? I mean, how did you manage being in a completely different culture? And was there something that just kind of just totally surprised you in a good way, while you were away?
I mean, I've been abroad before, not for studying, but just vacation. So my normal experience when I go abroad is that I don't fit in. So that's what I was expecting when I went there. But it was actually just, it was very comfortable, at least in Barcelona. And again, by trying to immerse myself in the culture, I think that also made people more patient with me. So when I did try to practice my Spanish, then I mean, I would have positive attitudes reflected and just getting to know the place was very helpful, I think, is how I tried to just fit in with the people who were there.
Um, so I so I chose to study at Singapore, and I was very place oriented. And I kind of expected that going to Singapore, I would just experience Singaporean culture. But what really surprised me and what made the transition so easy was like meeting other exchange students from other places around the world. So like I didn't just experience Singaporean culture. I got to learn about German culture from German exchange students and Mexican culture from Mexican students. And that was also what made the transition really easy because, like it was kind of like we were all in it together and we were all sort of going through the same new culture shocks together. And that's what made it a lot easier for me.
Yeah, definitely always be open to make new friends. This is something that I struggle with personally as an introvert, and I knew I had to change when I went over there. And thankfully at Yonsei, it has a very healthy international exchange program. And a lot of Californians through one of their UC travel study abroad agencies, and you just get together with a group of them, and then some of the Chinese students who also come to Korea a lot, and then some of the Vietnamese students, and you just go and explore Seoul. And Seoul is such a large metroplex, and everyone knows different things about it. And so you can explore a different corner of Seoul like it's a different state of the United States. Like it's amazing. And so definitely get yourself a good friend group, and it makes everything so much easier.
That's great. I mean, I think that, and just to echo what you all were saying, I think it's such a tremendous opportunity to travel abroad and just the kind of lessons that you learn that are outside of the classroom for sure. It's, just being embedded in a completely different place, meeting other people. Avani, I loved hearing you talk about meeting with the other exchange students, and Tori, you as well. So I think that, you just kind of think about how you broaden your kind of network, of friends. But certainly, you guys were all taking full loads of classes while you were there. And so, wanting to also, see as much and absorb as much of the place. And so, how did you balance that with the pressures of coursework, in navigating maybe, different languages, and then other activities that you were also interested in participating in?
Well, in this pre-planning, since even before college, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So, as a lot of you probably are coming in with, I had a ton of APs. So, this little course catalog that they give you at the beginning of college, I could check off all those boxes already. So, for me, it was a puzzle box of moving those classes forward. Like, I loaded my first 2 years so that when I was abroad in Korea, I wouldn't have to worry about near virtually anything. I could focus on Korea and Korean culture and just the Korean experience and studio, of course. But even my studio professor, once I got there to Korea, he was like super progressive. He was like, you are going to learn so much more walking around Seoul than you were ever going to do in this studio. And so he was very open and receptive to me just putting my image on what we were doing. And even our studio project was something in Seoul. And he was like, you can't look up, like, there's no way for you to be able to find all the information the local students are going to find. Just give me your idea and then go learn. And I think it helped tremendously.
I would agree. I feel like with the undergraduate international studio, it was kind of the same idea because we were using the city as our lab. So yes, we had our classes every day for the whole day, but our classes were exploring the city most of the time. So I could check off two things at once, exploring, seeing what Barcelona has to offer, and also getting my coursework done. But that being said, there are times when you do have to sit down and just do your work. So for me, I just had to make a schedule because I am one that would just wander around the city all day and just look at everything because there's so much to see. So definitely prior to arriving, just plan out your schedule, designate a certain amount of time to when you plan to explore, when you plan to hang out with your friends, when you plan to do your work. And I think that was a good balance for me. It worked.
Definitely find good cafes, because good cafes you can work in for hours and it's great.
And I think one thing I might add to that is it really helps to make friends, local student friends in all of your classes, because they're the ones who are familiar with the new learning styles and like what's the most efficient way to study for classes. So you won't ever like end up in a situation where you spent an entire day like studying something that was not even applicable or relevant to the test and you hadn't realized it. So definitely like make study groups and meet a lot of local students because they'll help you make things more effective.
That's great. I had a question that came to my mind, but I have promptly left my my brain. So let me, in terms of, so we, it's great hearing from you all, and I'm learning a lot too, actually, just hearing your experiences, because that's the one thing that I think, that I don't have an opportunity to hear that as directly as we're doing today. So I really appreciate hearing from you all. From the faculty point of view, certainly both Danielle and Saber, based in Atlanta, but both of you will have taught and will be teaching abroad. Do you teach differently whenever you're abroad? Do you frame? I mean, certainly, we've heard students talk about, and Saber and Danielle, you both also mentioned this as well about, the city is the classroom, and that you take the learning to the streets. But what other ways do you tailor your teaching differently when you're abroad than when you're in Atlanta, or is it not that different actually? Saber, I think you're muted, Saber.
So it's a bunch of things. Obviously, as Danielle was saying, and the students were, the examples are all around you. These are not coming mediated through photographs or slides, though they have their place as well. The fact that you can actually go, kick a building and touch it and get its tactility, those kinds of things are not possible. In Atlanta, let's say. The other thing is that you're also seeing those buildings 24/7. You're seeing them at the sunrise, sunset. So you've got a whole other set of experience of how buildings are in place. And then obviously they're lived. People are coming in and out and they're sitting around them. So there's a whole other kind of animation that the city has. And then, of course, the city throws up a lot of other things. There could be a demonstration. There could be something else. And so it's very, very active. But that's all about what one can learn when one is over. And for me, the most important realization, because I've been teaching internationally for the College of Computing for 17 years, it's not so much. So it's a truism. You go overseas and you see new things. And of course, we frame our classes in a way so that those things can actually come into focus and you can reflect on them. But the real learning happens when you come back home and you see once familiar things with fresh eyes. And that's the lens that I put up there. So what do you think it's like when you go back? How would it feel? And that's the most, so basically scaffolding the return so that they come back and have a different way of looking at what was once familiar. So I think that'd be the most important comment from me.
Oh, those are all great points, and I think it's the serendipity, whether really fun and exciting or sometimes not so great. You might have a site trip planned and then there's a sudden downpour, and so plans need to shift. Because the city literally is your classroom. At least for the Greece and Italy program, we don't have classroom spaces. So when we're in class time, we're on site. So I think that's kind of the fun of it. But then also being able to, as Saber mentioned, see other people interact with it. So it's less about kind of you and the structure, but actually seeing how it operates within the infrastructure of the actual city. When you're at historic sites, kind of understanding how does tourism become both sometimes a benefit and a hindrance to these places as we look to the future and how we're going to sustain these places. So I think there's a lot of really big picture questions that you can take in when you're physically there and you're talking and experiencing it with other people. And being able to see it in all different weather conditions and lighting conditions, and having the chance to have the time. I think the time is what's really precious in places that you get to absorb versus, just that kind of quick conversation that might happen in a classroom as we're in maybe like an architectural history survey or something like that.
That's great. So I've realized that, we've spent a lot of time, touching on UGIS, which is the Undergraduate International Studio Experience that Kyla participated on, GT Exchange, we've talked about with Tori and Avni, and then the Art and Architecture in Greece and Italy program. The other program that we haven't spoken about yet, and I'm hoping that maybe Sabra, maybe you want to say a few words about the Design, Develop, Build program, and the kind of the overview. Unfortunately, Daniel Berlecken, who is an associate professor in the School of Architecture, he is a director of that program, and he was unable to join us today. So Sabra, I'm wondering maybe you could say a few words about that.
Sure. So to put that in perspective, it's one of the 2 faculty-led study abroad programs that comes with courses and studio. The Design Build program has always been in Africa, and it's always in association with schools in Germany and Austria. It was going to go to Accra, to Ghana, the first time this summer, and it obviously none of us could be where we wanted to be this summer. But what's interesting about that program is that it's kind of front-loaded. So any kind of develop, design, build studio needs to have done some kind of research before they go, some kind of design, perhaps even some kind of detailing, so that when they're on the ground, they can start as soon as possible. So the Design Build program is 7 weeks on overseas, of which 5 weeks or so are in Africa. 2 weeks are with the teams in Germany, and there's usually a 1 or 2 weeks prior prep here. So it's a quite different program in the sense that you're with a very specific group of people who have worked on the same program, but then they join for the on-site in Africa and hopefully next year in Ghana again. So it's a terrific experience because we don't have that kind of sustained design build program on campus or in Atlanta that way. It's something that Daniel has been lucky enough to participate in. These are programs in universities like Aachen who've been doing this for decades. And so we basically enter a very well, so it's a tremendous opportunity for to be with a specific group of people focused on a specific project, but happening elsewhere.
That's great. Thank you, Saber. So I want to share my screen and go through a kind of a quick overview of the program and touch on some aspects of our curriculum for our attendees. And so let me just get my screen up here. Let's see. So hopefully everyone can see my screen and can follow along. So this is the third of our series of webinars that we're offering over the summer. We have a fourth webinar that will be happening on Thursday, July the 9th. This one will be happening at 4 o'clock, and we will have a series of alumni from our Bachelor of Science and Architecture program who will be joining us and talking about the various directions that they've taken their degree and into the profession. So that should be a really terrific session there. I'm hoping that you all have gotten a sense of the people here in the School of Architecture, because it is in fact the people that also differentiates our program, and we are a close-knit community. The students with the faculty, we have opportunities where students can get involved as ambassadors. Those of you who are incoming first-year students may have spoken with some of these undergraduate ambassadors, and these are really they're there to answer your questions, because a lot of times, while we as faculty can talk about the program, sometimes you just want to talk to a current student and ask, so what's it really like to be a student there in the School of Architecture? Other ways that students are involved is we have a student advisory council that meets with school leadership once a month, and we talk about all kinds of things relative to the curriculum, the program, and these students are elected by their peers as representatives, and then they're essentially a conduit, and that maintains open communication between us and the students. Student organizations, we have, we actually have 4, this slide I'm realizing, but the 3 student organizations we have here, American Institute of Architecture Students, Equity in Architecture, National Organization of Minority Architecture Students, are very active in the school. The 4th one is ECO, and what's interesting about ECO is it's a group that basically came out of discussions in the Student Advisory Council, and this just happened last year. And so new initiatives emerged from those conversations. And then, of course, the faculty. We have a rich and diverse faculty with a broad range of interests and teach across the curriculum and are looking forward to meeting you here on campus. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the academic program. And so the Bachelor of Science is a 4-year pre-professional degree program. And you can see here in this diagram where the design studios are the backbone of the curriculum. And so those are the boxes that are outlined in kind of a pink. And each one of the studios has a particular theme or foundation to it that sets kind of a platform for the next studio. And so as you're continuing through the curriculum, you will continue to reference previous studio work as you're building your capacity as a critical thinker and a critical maker, and preparing you for the final studio as a senior in the interdisciplinary studio in the spring. I've also included our core architecture curriculum, the required coursework. You can see that across the bottom there that we have courses that are co-requisites with the classes that the studio classes as a way of kind of building connections between, let's say, media modeling. You're learning various software and digital tools, and then leveraging those skills in the design studio. And then we have the series of other courses in the building technology and then the history of architecture courses that fill in. What I don't show here are the 45 credits of core curriculum requirements from Georgia Tech. And those courses, several of those courses, we've heard the students talk about the AP credits that they come in with will actually end up accounting as credit for something like the humanities. There might be math, English, social science, and those are things that the Institute will work with you on that when you are accepted. So we are a culture of design and making, and just a series of images that show the design studio that you can see there's lots of conversation, meeting with faculty, working through design problems. We test things also. This is from the structures class, testing one of the bridges and wanting it to fail because through the failure comes the learning. And then making things with our hands, too. And this is one of the from the construction technology course. And so testing plaster casts and then displaying them in the courtyard. We use robots, too. So we run the kind of wide range of different modes of making here at in the School of Architecture. Talking a little bit about where you'll be. So Atlanta is or Georgia Tech is in Midtown Atlanta. It is an urban campus in the city. But when you're on the campus itself, it's this kind of incredible blend of landscape, modern buildings, historic buildings, and buildings like this one, which is the Candida building, just opened last year. The first of a living building challenge facility in the Southeast, has classroom spaces, seminars spaces, maker space, and an auditorium. This is Architecture West. Architecture is actually housed in 4 buildings across campus. This is one of our buildings here where we have offices, studio spaces, review space. This is a space called the Crow's Nest, which is where we have both formal and informal reviews. The Hinman Research Building, where we also have undergraduate and graduate studios, faculty offices, the PhD offices are there as well. So, as Saber mentioned at the very beginning of this presentation, is that while I've just showed you all the great spaces here on campus, but we want you to get out. We want you to leave also and to experience global education. So the Undergraduate International Studio gives juniors and seniors the opportunity to spend a full semester in residence. And last spring, the students were in Barcelona. This program also invites students from other schools to join as well. And so you have an opportunity to be there not only with your own classmates, but you meet other students too. The Georgia Tech Exchange Program these are a series of programs that have been pre-vetted, working with Saber and the school to ensure that the courses at these programs will map onto your curriculum here at Tech, so it doesn't increase time to graduation. So studio courses will have been already been pre-vetted. The other architecture courses, elective courses, at times some of the required architecture courses as well. The important thing is that with the core requirements is that the core curriculum that you have taken care of that in your first or second year. And the academic advisors do a great job working with you to ensure that you've made sure that the core requirements are taken care of, and then also in coordination with Saber. The Greece and Italy program, 7 weeks, as Danielle had shared with you all at the beginning of our conversation today, and traveling through Greece and Italy. And, what an incredible opportunity to go and visit these various civic spaces and the museums, and to be walking through the spaces and learning about the history of the plays. And then the Design, Develop, Build program. This is the program that Sabra just shared information about. This is probably our newest program, and it brings together students in Germany and the United States and working in Africa, building structures like the one that you see here for underserved communities. I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about admissions. I encourage you all to go to this website at godtech.edu/admissions. It has a bunch of different pieces of information that can help you depending on what kind of student you are, whether you're a first-year student, so a first-time first year, or a transfer student, or an international student. They do have what they refer to as their admissions field guide, which has various tips and advice. The one thing I wanted to talk on just briefly is the optional portfolio. So we invite applicants to submit a portfolio, which is optional. And I want to just, I guess, reinforce to you all that what we're looking for in this portfolio is that we are not looking for a large body of architectural work. This is why you're applying to a School of Architecture in an undergraduate program. What we are looking for are things like that show us kind of how you think creatively. So if you have taken classes in like studio art classes, or if you've done things in metalwork or in pottery, photography. Maybe you have participated or you intend to participate in a pre-college program, an architecture camp. There are many schools across the country that offer programs like this in the summer. Georgia Tech offers a camp, and in fact, there's one that's happening right now. And you'll have work that comes out of that. Absolutely, include that information as well in the portfolio. So really, the portfolio is a way for us just to kind of understand how you think about things, how you look at the world, and so I encourage you all to, just kind of put some of your creative work in there. And then the last thing is join us on social media. We maintain active presence on all of these platforms, and that's also a great way for you to see what life is like as a student in the School of Architecture, also just at Georgia Tech. On our School of Architecture website, we currently have a link that brings you to all the studios from last spring and our end of year show. So that's going to be up there all summer. So please do take a look at that. You can just go and look at the first year studio work and get a sense of what students accomplish at the end of the first year, and then also some of the other work as well. So that is a kind of a brief overview of what we offer. I hope that we've been able to answer your questions about the program. I want to definitely thank Tori, Avni, Kyla, Danielle, and Saber for joining us for the conversation and talking about specifically the International Education Program. And then certainly also to Carmen for setting this all up. So, I don't see any questions in the Q&A. The one thing that I will add here is, because the PowerPoint that I went through is an abbreviated overview of the undergraduate program. If you are interested in the longer version, you can see that on the Institute Admissions website. And you can also hear from other students in that video as well. So let's see, Saver, Danielle, Avni, Tori, or Kyla, You want to add anything else here at the end? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, I was just saying stay safe and see you soon.
Yeah. Yeah, please reach out with any questions at all. If you have any, I will put my email in the chat, in the general chat. So if your question was not answered today or something comes up after we've ended this session, please reach out to me. If I don't know the answer, I will certainly put you in touch with someone who can. So thank you very much. And I hope I'll see you all at the alumni session on July the 9th.